So to begin our webinar, we'll hear some remarks from Luke Steele. Luke is a Cultural Affairs Officer at the U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo. So Luke.
Great, thank you everyone. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us today. On behalf of the United States Embassy in Santo Domingo, I am very pleased to welcome you to the 8th webinar in our higher education series. It is a true pleasure to be here with all of you to explore more information on personalizing online learning with LabXchange. Promoting access to high quality education is one of our key priorities at the Embassy. I am very happy that Dr. Jessica Silverman, Content and Collaboration Manager at LabXchange, is able to share a presentation on personalizing online learning with LabXchange, which is Harvard University's free online platform for science education. LabXchange allows educators to remix and share content to support differentiated, personalized learning. Educators can combine this content with their own materials to create customized learning pathways. As well as facilitating content creation and remixing, LabXchange connects learners, educators, and researchers through social features such as private classes, discussion forums, and the ability to mentor or be mentored. Thanks, of course, also to our Fulbright alumnus and professor at INTEC, Dr. Khalil Eraso, who is serving as the moderator for today's discussion. Thank you, Dr. Jessica Silverman, for sharing your time and experience with us today. I know you're very busy and it means a lot to us that you're able to join us. I'm excited also to see the opportunities for collaboration that arise from this and other webinars in our series for higher education. Thank you all again, and estamos unidos.
Thank you for your words, Luke. So the idea is the following. So as you know, we have faced many challenges during the pandemic, and many of these challenges are education related. So in this webinar, we're going to focus on a specific challenge that we have faced recently, and it has to do with laboratories in science classes. So as we all know, science is based on doing experiments. So we go to labs, we perform experiments, we have observations, and we essentially compare our observations with our current knowledge and the models that we have. So during the pandemic, then we have a lot of limitations because we don't have access to laboratories. So we don't have access to these tools. So today we have with us Dr. Jessica Silverman and her colleague Ileana Sauka, who are going to talk to us about a tool called LabXchange, which is a tool from Harvard University. And it is aimed at filling this gap that we have with respect to how to do laboratories and experiments in a virtual setting. Dr. Silverman is a content and collaborations manager at LabXchange, where she manages the creation of digital learning experiences and works with educators in the implementation. Dr. Silverman has a PhD in microbiology from Tufts University in Boston, and has extensive teaching experience in both chemistry and biology. So with that, we welcome Dr. Silverman to our webinar. Dr. Silverman, the floor is yours. Our virtual floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eraso, for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak with all of you today. It's a pleasure to be here. As Dr. Eraso mentioned, I am a former high school teacher, and you know, I'm very passionate about the mission of LabXchange as well as the resources that are provided there and how it can really make a difference for both students and educators. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you, if I may. To just orient us a little bit in our tour today and show you what LabXchange is all about. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about why LabXchange was created and some of the goals that we are working on and some of the issues that we're working to address with our platform. I'm going to, of course, take you on a tour of LabXchange and show you all of the different things that you can do with LabXchange and talk about some next steps that you may like to take after our time together today. And of course, we want to make sure that your questions are answered, so please feel free to keep track of those questions and we'll make sure those get answered either at the end of our time together today, or we'll provide a way to get in touch if you'd like to follow up with those questions. So LabXchange is a platform for teaching and learning science, but it's more than that. It's unique because it's also a community that connects students and teachers and researchers to allow for collaboration and generally sharing their excitement and their passion about different topics in science and education. LabXchange is developed at Harvard University, and I want to make sure that it's quite clear that it is completely free thanks to funding from the Amgen Foundation. So during our time today, I'll talk about ways that you can customize your experience with LabXchange by creating an account, but I just want to make sure that it's clear that those accounts are completely free and optional, and so everything that you're going to see today is available completely for free. So at LabXchange, we are really working to reimagine how we teach science and of course make it all free as well. That's a big part of our mission to increasing access to high quality science education. We really want to work to put students at the driver's seat of their education and to provide a deeper, more authentic engagement with the process of science. As many of you, I'm sure know, science is very messy sometimes. Your experiments don't work, the data doesn't make sense. So it's very important that students become familiar with, the process of science early and be comfortable with the process of iteration that is so closely tied with science. So you're seeing a little video here of one of our virtual lab simulations. As Dr. Razo mentioned, that is something that we're very pleased to provide in general as a tool to support both hybrid learning as well as remote learning. And it's a particularly timely tool that we're happy to provide now in a time when many people can't access their usual lab facilities. So we'll certainly dive deeper into those simulations and some of the other resources that we have on LabXchange to support active learning of science for students online. We also really want to help students understand what it is to be involved in the scientific community now and the diversity of ways that students can become involved. So we understand that students come from a variety of backgrounds and they bring so many different talents and perspectives to their work. So we want to show them that there are ways for them to participate, whether their interest is in economics or finance or communication or art. There are so many different fields now that touch STEM, and so we want to show students the variety of different ways that they can contribute. So we'll take a look at some of our different types of content, but one of them that we'll talk about is our narratives, which are stories from scientists sharing, what it is that makes them excited about science and their research and what keeps them going. And these are a great way for students to start to understand that scientists are real people like them, and that science is something that's accessible for them as well. And in that vein, we're really hoping to bring together a diverse community that, really champions a number of different voices and showcases the real diversity of perspective and opinion and approach that exists in the scientific community and that is necessary in order to address the real complex challenges that exist in science today. So LabXchange is a really rich tool that does a lot of different things. So I will give you an introduction to some of these today, but I just want to give you a sense for some of the ways that our community is using LabXchange. So one of the primary things that folks do with LabXchange is use it to explore new topics and careers in life sciences. And so we'll highlight some of those resources for you today. We'll also talk about how you can design and share learning experiences with others, whether that's students or fellow colleagues. Coming soon, we have global discussion forums, which will allow you to discuss innovations in science and education with colleagues around the world. And the content and the features of LabXchange are really designed to help students be able to apply science to real world issues. I'm going to show you some of the resources that make LabXchange a place to come and develop professional skills as well, whether you're an educator or a scientist. And one of those includes our mentoring functionality. So we'll touch on that briefly as well, the ability to really connect with mentors, again, from around the world. And this is another part of our mission, really to increase access to the expertise and the guidance that students normally wouldn't have in their network in order to be able to, pursue their excitement about science. And I'm sure that there's more ways that you all will think about to use LabXchange, and we hope that you'll stay in touch with us and let us know how you're leveraging the platform. We're always excited to hear, how this resource is being used and what we can do to make this an even more supportive resource for everyone. So with that, I'm going to take you on a tour of the LabXchange platform. Please feel free to follow along if you like. We are at labxchange.org, so this is what you should see when you visit our homepage. So LabXchange is really designed to provide a modular, personalized approach to learning science. So we're going to take a tour of our library and take a look at some of the content that we provide that's from us. We are also content designers, as well as from some of our collaborators, and show you some of the ways that you can use this content, combine it with things that you already use, that you enjoy, that your students enjoy, to really create customized experiences that excite students and really meet them where they are. We're going to navigate today using the Browse button. So there's 4 different segments of our site that we'll touch on today. We're going to start on the Explore page here, which is where you can go to find different types of content that we have available, get a sense for the different topics and sort of the latest, newest content that the community is excited about. We'll spend some time in the library. Of course, as a former teacher, I always like to make sure that I take educators to the library to show you how to find what you need for your students very quickly. And we'll also talk about the dashboard, which is how you can personalize and customize your experience on LabXchange by creating your own content and classes that allow you to share and connect content for different learners or for colleagues. And then we'll finish up in our People tab, which again is our mentoring features. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So for now, we're going to head over to the Explore page. And as I mentioned, this is where you'll see some of our latest content that's featured, content that might be topical. So we have some content related to coronavirus or supports for remote teaching and learning. This is also a great place to come for introductory materials on LabXchange. So after today, if you're interested in learning more and exploring our platform, this is a great place to come for some helpful resources. But it also gives you a sense of the different types of collections that we have available and sort of what the platform can support in terms of different learning objectives. So we are primarily a life sciences platform. That's our in-house expertise, but we are expanding quickly. So you'll see that right now, a lot of the content in the library does support different aspects of biology, like biotechnology, genetics, molecular biology, ecology. So all kinds of different fields that we're excited to continue expanding. We also have content to support chemistry, physics, as well as some more applied sciences, global health and health science, to help students really start to connect what they're seeing in the news and with what they're learning in the classroom or virtual classroom, as it may be. Science and Society is another example of content that's designed to really help students be able to interpret the world around them and participate as an active citizen in the different scientific issues that touch their lives. As I mentioned, we're very interested in helping students to get a real sense for what the process of science is all about and help students prepare if they hope to eventually work in a lab environment, to feel more confident when they're able to do that. So we have content related to helping you understand lab etiquette and who are the different people you'll encounter in a lab, some of those things that are hard to learn unless someone shares that with you in that environment. We also have content to support students and professionals in their transitions in their career. So whether that be, getting excited about science and thinking about applying to college or graduate school, thinking about what careers may be available to them once they get excited about science. And as I mentioned, for educators, thinking about how to develop new skills, like how to work with some of these virtual lab simulations that we'll talk about, how to pivot your instruction to, fully remote if that's something that is impacting your classroom right now. So I would encourage you to think about LabXchange not just as a place to learn science, but also as a place to continue growing throughout your career. I want to also highlight while we're here some of our collaborators. So one of the great things about LabXchange is that we're able to quickly scale our library and bring you more and more resources as we build collaborations with other high quality organizations like Khan Academy and iBiology, who are really on board with our mission of bringing high quality content to folks around the world for free. So you'll see that our library is composed of content from these groups who have donated their content and made it available for you to remix and use as you like. And I think this is really one of the strengths of LabXchange, is to have all of these different perspectives and ways of looking at content and different topics represented. So for example, we don't just have, content related to explaining how, DNA replication works. We also have stories from scientists, as I mentioned, these narratives that really help you contextualize why learning that topic is important and how somebody's using that in order to, address real questions in research. So coupling some of these, high profile, big name providers like Khan Academy and HarvardX with some lesser known content that's equally exciting and interesting for students like our Science in Real Life, which is a graduate student from Harvard who has this great YouTube channel that has very exciting videos. So all of these types of content are available for you, again, to really mix and match and find exactly the experience that you're looking for to help support yourself if you're learning a new topic for the first time, or your students as well. So I would encourage you to come back and take a look at these collections as you have time, but I certainly do want to make sure that I show you our library and how to navigate and find just what it is that you're looking for. So again, using that browse button, we'll head over to the library. And the library really gives you a sense for what's unique about the LabXchange approach. There are a lot of places online that you can find great content, but on LabXchange, you have the freedom to not only engage with this content, but also to sequence it in a way that makes sense for you and for your learners. And for me personally, as an educator, that really was a game changer. So I'm going to show you our coronavirus pathway just to give you a sense of what pathways are all about. So our coronavirus pathway we designed earlier this spring to help students understand, why were bats a part of the conversation when the pandemic, was first coming to light. So by stringing together a series of short text readings, assessment questions, images, we have an image related to differential diagnosis here, glossary support. So putting together all of these bite-sized pieces, students progress through those. They have the flexibility to, jump around, read what's interesting to them, go in the order they like. And at the end, they've met a set of targeted learning objectives. And so I often will liken this to a lesson, something that you would do with students over the course of 1 or 2 classes. And, we heard from our community that our teachers and students alike were really inspired by this and excited by this. They made copies of it. They adjusted it for their students. Their students, did reports based on what they learned here. So it's just so exciting to see how folks really took this to the next level and customized it for themselves. So I'll share with you in a little bit how you can take a pathway like this and really make it your own. But just wanted to give you a sense of really the modular approach at LabXchange. So each one of these pieces could be read on its own and would be interesting and you would learn something, or again, you can string these together into these custom sequences. So there's a lot of different types of content that you can find in our library. And so we already discussed some of the different topics that are available, so you can filter depending on the topic that you're interested in. You can also filter by background knowledge, and I just wanted to highlight this because we often get the question, who is LabXchange for? And of course, we think that it's for everybody, but the content in the library is primarily designed to support students in the secondary and undergraduate environment. So we've gone with the tag of background knowledge to help you find the resources that are right for your students, because we know that you may be learning a new topic as an introductory secondary student or as an undergraduate. So no background knowledge content, if you want a rough guide, is for maybe early, secondary students, but again, anyone learning a new topic. Some background knowledge would be for students who have seen a little bit of this topic before, so perhaps your advanced secondary and early undergraduate students, and extensive would be beyond that. So just give you a sense of sort of the target audience for this platform. And just a reminder again that everything we're seeing here is part of our public library. So this is accessible to everyone. There's no account needed. You just come to LabXchange, click, and start learning. So I want to share with you some of the different content types that are available and kind of walk you through some of the interactive pieces that we've developed, just to give you a sense for some of the tools that are here to support you in giving your students that active experience with the process of science. So of course we have text and video, as you would expect, even bite-sized images that can sometimes be very helpful for students to look at, opportunities for assessment, case studies, feature student research. We even have modular textbooks and prepackaged sections of material, which are our clusters, which we'll come to in a little bit. But I want to show you our interactive. So I'm going to filter the library now by interactives. And we have, as I mentioned, collections from a number of different sources to meet different needs. So we have content from, for example, this group, Lifeology, has a great collaboration between scientists and artists to create some really beautiful content that's engaging and friendly and approachable for different audiences. On the other side, we have content from BioDigital that is a very detailed look at a coronavirus virion. So really something for everyone depending on the level of detail that you're looking for. And these interactives, allow students to go at their own pace as they're working through this material. So I'm scrolling through here just by advancing my mouse, and I can, stop at any time, can go back, I can jump around to different sections. So as a student, I don't have to worry that the lecture is going too fast or I'm missing something. I really can take this at my own pace, and it's a great way to visualize some of these molecular level concepts that can be challenging for students. From an educator perspective, this allows you to, direct your students to a particular section of the interactive that you may want to discuss, or give them something as an extension opportunity to explore, applications of a different topic that you may be learning. So I would encourage you to explore the collection of interactive content available here. There really is, like I said, something for everyone. So I'm sure that you'll find something for you and for your students. But if you don't, we're always very interested to hear what you would like to see represented on LabXchange and what kind of content would help support you and your students. So we hope that you'll reach out and let us know if there's something you'd like to see on LabXchange. I also, while we're here in the library, want to share with you our virtual lab simulations. So I've pre-filtered our library here by simulation, as well as by LabXchange as a source. Again, we are both a content creator and a content curator for our platform. We also have simulations from some notable organizations like PhET and Concord Consortium. The simulations that we've developed are a little bit different because they're designed to really replicate as closely as you can in an online environment the lab experience that you get from doing an experiment in a real laboratory environment. So we'll take a look here at our micropipetting simulation just to give you a sense for what I'm describing here. So you'll see that the simulation is offered at different levels. So if you are new to a topic, you can start here. There's a lot of language support that helps guide you through this. If you are not familiar with micropipetting, this is a great place to start. But if you are, and you're looking for a challenge or new applications, you can advance to some of the higher levels here. So we'll go ahead and start so you can see the structure of the simulations. So we're starting off with some context, why are we doing this experiment? And throughout the simulation, we're working to model for students the scientific process and good practice using this lab notebook structure at the side. So we read about why we're doing this experiment, and then we have an opportunity to preview our materials. And I always like to share the story that when I started graduate school, I had never seen a micropipette and I used it incorrectly for the first few weeks. So I really wish that I had had a simulation like this that would have helped me to be able to preview this equipment, understand what it is, what it does, how to use it, so I didn't have to look so foolish at my lab bench. But it's also a great way for students who may not be able to access this equipment either, again, due to the pandemic, or perhaps this isn't something that is normally part of the curriculum or part of the budget. This still allows students to get a sense for this equipment, feel confident when they do have a chance to approach it, later on. So we then have an interactive prediction section here. Students get a sense for what they think is going to happen throughout the experiment. And this is shown to them later after the results so they can compare what they thought would happen with what actually did happen in their experiment. Of course, we have the protocol section here where you actually get to dive in and use this sandbox environment to do your experiment. And you'll notice that I'm not following the directions. So there are detailed steps here that you're welcome to follow, and it will check them off for you. But we've really designed this as a place for students to have the freedom to do it their way, to learn through mistakes, to try something, to fail, to try again. There's no cost here. This is all free, so they can start over as many times as they like. They can use up all this red dye and start again. There's no precious resources that are being wasted. And again, from an educator perspective, this can be a great way to help students be familiar with the equipment when they do see it in a lab environment. How many times have you run an experiment with students and they maybe don't know what they're supposed to be doing, they haven't read the protocol. So going through something like this really helps prepare them and give them that confidence. So when they come to class, they're making the most of their time, and your time as well can really be spent on more exciting things than reiterating what they should be doing. In the results section, students are shown what they've done during the experience. So I have my predictions, I have my actual work or lack thereof in this case, and I'm shown, what was expected in an ideal situation. So this is, again, a nice way for students to get a sense of what their preconceived ideas were, how their behavior in the lab and their particular technique impacted their data. We have an opportunity here for assessment as well after the fact with feedback. So really with an eye to implementing this in a hybrid or even an asynchronous setting where you might not be there to help steer them to the right direction. And then at the end, there's a summary section here that goes over what they've accomplished through the simulation and some tips on best practices for how to use this equipment, again, when they do get into that lab environment. So all of this is really designed to give students that exposure, that confidence to using these lab techniques to really give them, that experience that will help them to be competitive and be comfortable engaging with science further in the future. So I encourage you again to check out some of the different simulations that we have available. We have 12 at the moment on different topics in molecular biology and biotechnology, like gel electrophoresis, Western blotting, running protein gels, and more to come. We're launching PCR soon, so keep an eye out for that. We also have another type of simulation that we don't have time to get into today that teaches experimental design. So I'll leave you to explore that, but that's a great technique and a great mindset to be teaching students, especially early in their careers as well. I'll show you an example of how we've contextualized these simulations in a pathway, just to give you a sense for how you can create a lesson around these resources. You could certainly use the simulation before a lab, after a lab, just on its own. If you want to, you can also create a pathway that will, again, fold this simulation or whatever learning experiences you choose to include into a lesson for your students. So here we give students a little bit of an introduction to why you might use a micropipette, how, measuring small volumes, why that's important to biology. We give them a tour of the equipment using one of those scrollable interactives. We have a little bit of formative assessment here, and then they're really ready to engage with that very rich simulation experience. And after that, we're giving them a little bit of context about how this technique is used by someone in their work to address real questions in science. So again, this is just an idea of how you could string these together, just a suggestion. If you like this, but you want to make some adjustments, what you can do, and again, this is where the customization comes in, and so you would need an account to be logged in to remember that you're doing this. But what you can do is you can make a copy of this. And I've done that here. So you can see that my copy is now able to be edited. And so I can change anything I like. I can remove something that maybe isn't relevant for my students. I can add something else. And I can pull from our public library here, can search and see what's available and filter by the types of experiences that I'm looking for. So I'll add something here. Or if I don't see anything in the public library, I can also create and add my own content. So here's some of the content that I've created myself that I can also add into this pathway as well. So this really gives you the freedom to mix and match and make something that really is targeted for just what your students need, either at the level of a class, or it could even be an individual student if you like. This is, again, that feature that for me was a game changer as an educator. I used to teach a course that was differentiated for many different levels. Creating the curriculum for all of those students was very time consuming and challenging. And so having a tool like this would make that so much easier and faster for me. So not to mention much more interesting for the students to have that really personalized lesson. So when I'm done making these customizations, you'll see it says I can publish privately. So again, that was the idea that this requires an account so that you remember your progress, but this goes to your private dashboard. And I'll just show you my dashboard briefly to give you a sense for what you can do with that. So this is where all of your content that you create will go. And for anyone who joined us after the first few minutes, again, I just want to reiterate that accounts are free. They're just there to help remember your progress. So this is my library of content that I've created, and I can add new content here at any time. I can add my own pathway from scratch. I can add customized assessment questions or bundles of assessment questions. I can add documents. So if I have lessons or worksheets that I already use, I can add those very easily here. So the idea is really to provide you with a tool that is, saving time for you, allowing you to use things that you already are familiar with and that are successful for your classes, as well as providing a tool that, gives students that customization. And by the way, if students have accounts, they can also create all of this content. So that can be a great way for students to demonstrate their mastery of different topics as well by creating their own pathways or their own, texts or videos that really allow them to demonstrate what they've learned. So I want to show you where that pathway came from that we were looking at, just to give you a sense of some of the content that exists for you. I see we have a lot of questions piling up, so I won't take too much longer and make sure we get to those questions. But the pathway that we just looked at is part of a larger cluster. So each of the hexagons here leads to one of those pathways, like what we just looked at. And together we call this a cluster. So you can go through and you can select the pathways that make sense for your learning goals. You could go through all of them if you like. We also offer tours through this content. So you might be interested in a thematic introduction to genetic engineering, just a high-level overview of what it is and why you might want to do that. Or you might be interested in something more functional. So how do you actually build a recombinant plasmid? So you can see the different pathways that are lighting up here. So the different recommendations for how you navigate through this content. So we're very excited about how this helps us think about curriculum. So, thinking about, rather than a linear curriculum that everyone does the same thing, you could think about, what parts of this are common experiences for everyone, and what parts are, groups of content that meet specific students' interests or needs. And I'm also very excited to share that we are going to be releasing later this fall all of the resources that you see here related to biotechnology in a number of different languages, including Spanish. So excited to make these available for a much wider audience very soon. So stay tuned for that. And you can find this content, by the way, in the library. So this was a cluster that we were looking at. So I filtered by content type cluster. We have a number of different clusters here. So the one we were just looking at is related to biotechnology. We have clusters around applying to college, CRISPR for anyone interested in using this with their students. This is a wonderful wealth of resources that walks you through a narrative related to CRISPR and HIV. And then for anyone who may teach AP biology, we have a cluster of resources that is roughly aligned with that curriculum as well. And we'll be launching additional clusters soon to be those sort of starting points for you, an easy place to start drawing content from. We also have a cluster to support educators and students in getting used to using LabXchange and learning and teaching online. So I would recommend this as a follow-up resource to today as well. So I will just show you very briefly some of the social features. I'm not going to go into how to use those necessarily unless there's interest. Again, I want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions. So we have been spending most of our time in the library here, taking a look at all of the content. Again, that's all publicly available and free. The dashboard is a way to customize your experience. We looked at how you can create and store your own content here. You can also favorite content from the library. So as you're browsing, if you see something you like, you click on that star and it will put it here in your favorites for you, so you can always find it. We also have the ability to create classes. So I would strongly recommend creating one and checking this out and kind of exploring this feature, but I'll be happy to share with you, what it can do and how I've used it. So this is a way to create a private collaborative space on LabXchange. And so this is a way to share content with either learners or colleagues, whoever you choose to invite. And it can be a planning space, a place to discuss, a place to monitor student progress. There's a lot of different ways to use this. I'll show you an example of one of the classes that I ran this summer for professional development. So this class has content from my learners here that I've selected from some from our library, some I've created. So this is here for my learners to engage with. I can monitor the progress of my learners through the class. So you see this progress tab, so I can get information about what they've completed and their score, and I can download this at any time. And I can also encourage my learners to discuss what they're learning. I can develop posts for them to participate in discussions, and I can use this as a space to, again, share resources, to plan, to facilitate student discussions, or use protocols that I would normally use in class to discuss. I can do that all here virtually. So this is also a nice way, to help facilitate a sense of online community in a time of remote learning. The last feature that I'll just mention is there, but I won't show you how it works unless, again, there's interest. But in the Browse tab, again, there's the final tab here, which is the People tab. And this is a way to identify everyone in the LabXchange community who's made their profile public and accessible and made themselves available for mentoring. So if mentoring is something that you or your students are interested in, I'm happy to connect with you and tell you more about that. And this is a great feature to explore. So I'll just take us back to our slides here. I know I told you that LabXchange is a rich resource and it does a lot. So there's a lot here that you can explore. And I would recommend starting with that remote learning cluster that we looked at, which is sort of a nice package for how to get started, depending on what you're interested in doing with LabXchange, like using the virtual simulations, creating an online class, making your own content. We have guides for all of that. And I want to just leave here on the screen a way of getting in touch. We're going to spend some time answering questions, so I'm not going anywhere just yet, but I do want to make sure that you have a sense of how to reach us if you're interested through our mailing list, signing up for updates, and following us on social media as well. So I'll leave this on the screen as I hand it back to Dr. Arazzo for questions, and I'm happy to share this screen again in a little bit.
Thank you for your presentation, Jessica. It was very nice. So we're going now to address some of the Q&A that have come up during the talk. And we're going to start with something related to how to use the platform in general. And it's something that I actually wanted to ask as well. So the first question reads, as a former teacher, what are some of the best practices that you have identified in using LabXchange in course content? And I guess that this question goes along the following lines. So let's say I'm a sophomore high school chemistry teacher, and probably you have some topics that you are going to cover during your class. I mean, as part of the complete course. So how do you start using the platform? How do you get going, and how do you kind of build the content for those topics that you're going to cover?
Sure. So what I would recommend is starting, putting yourself in the learner's shoes. So browsing the library and seeing what kinds of experiences your learners would find interesting. And once you start to find a collection of things that you would like to share with them, I would recommend, thinking about creating a pathway, using that create content, and then thinking about sharing that with your students through a class. And the other way that I would use LabXchange as well is to work with my colleagues to create pathways that we could all use with our students, so that we're not necessarily reinventing the wheel each time, so that we can collaborate on creating new lessons.
Sounds great. Another question says, can LabXchange be used with younger kids? So I guess you mentioned that it is divided based on the background information. So I probably what's the earliest age that is probably recommended to use the platform? I guess it's along the lines that question goes. Probably someone, maybe young kids, little kids.
Exactly. Yeah, we do get that question a lot. So I will say that in order to create an account on LabXchange, you do need to be 13. So to the extent that you would want to use this, the customizable features like pathways and classes with your students, you would want to use that with older students. However, we certainly welcome younger students to browse the LabXchange library with a parent or teacher. There's some wonderful content, like some of the things that I pointed out from Science IRL and from Lifeology, that are very engaging for younger learners as well.
Right. And the context, it's focused on science, right? So it doesn't have anything related to math or psychology. It's mainly, like you mentioned, like life science. So is it expanding, I guess?
Great. Yes, we are definitely expanding into math particularly. We are developing some math-related content around data analysis, and we also do have some math-related content on the platform. And we are certainly very interested in expanding into other topics as well.
That sounds great, yeah. Is the content available in English, or is it available also in other languages like Spanish as well?
Right, great question. So we are right now embarking on a very exciting journey to translate the menus for our website in preparation for making more content available in other languages. Currently, the content is primarily in English, although we do have a few collaborators who offer some of their pieces in other languages. And as I mentioned, we're very excited to launch our biotechnology collection in 11 different languages later this fall.
Wow, sounds great. What sort of low resource technology and content would you recommend instructors include within their coursework if they face low bandwidth and connectivity issues?
Great question. Yeah, we have worked very hard to design our platform to be very to require low data usage and to be comparable to, using YouTube or something like that. It's also very mobile friendly. So it's a great way for students to have flexibility in how they're accessing the technology. And certainly a lot of the resources like our scrollables and simulations actually work offline as well, as long as you have it preloaded. If you close your computer, go home, don't have access there, it will still work for the most part. So in a lot of different ways to reach that content.
Great, that's a really good. I was going to ask that as well. If you can like load the content and use it kind of offline, if you're like in the classroom or something, you don't have access to internet.
Sure, some of it. I would doubt that, YouTube videos, for example, I don't think that would work, but I know that I've had to do many demonstrations in situations where I didn't have access. So I do know that the scrollables and simulations work well that way.
Great. Is it possible to download some of the content, or is all to be used online in the website?
Yeah, so really the experience is best on LabXchange. And so, we do have a lot of different agreements with our collaborators who provide their content in the context of LabXchange. So really that's how it's meant to be consumed.
Okay. Is there any way to share the videos or?
Oh, I'm so sorry, the audio dropped off a little bit. I just heard share videos. I'm so apologize. I'm not sure if the audio issue is on my side or not, but
I don't know if it's my side either. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Is there a way to share the videos or any activity in any other platform, like a Google Classroom or something like that?
Yes, actually, we do have a nice, easy way to share to Google Classroom. And actually, I'm going to share my screen one more time just to demonstrate that feature. So all of the content on LabXchange has a unique link. So really anything that you find that you're interested in, you can just copy that link and share that with whoever you like in whatever way you like.
Right.
And in addition, you can also use this share button. And so this will share it directly to your Google Classroom. This will open up your Google Classroom and allow you to decide which class you'd like to post it to and how you'd like it represented. So we know that this is a popular feature. So we're looking into whether we can add additional buttons here. But for now, this is the easiest way to share to Google Classroom.
Right. Probably now with people like teaching online, they're looking to ways to combine it with whatever they usually do in their classes. So probably that's where that question is going to. Is there a limitation in the content use or how it should be credited? I guess it's along like copyright issues that question is asking about.
Sure. So I would say that, we certainly want LabXchange to be a place where you have the freedom to use the resources that are right for you. So we certainly ask that you think about, copyright just as you normally would in sharing resources for your classes. But you do have that freedom with the private mode to be able to add, content that's right for you.
Right. And probably that's one of the nice features, that it can be like customizable and make it fit within whatever you usually do in your class.
Yeah, exactly. We really, don't want this to be one more tool or one more platform. We really do want this to be a time saver and something that is, really beneficial for you and for educators and their students. And so we certainly, look forward to hearing feedback on whether we've hit the mark on that and whether the customization features are supportive.
That'll be great. Can you use LabXchange on any device? Do you recommend any specific device? I guess a lot of people now have tablets and things like that. Is there a specific platform or yeah, or device where it will work best?
Mm-hmm. So we've worked hard to make sure that you know, the site is accessible through a variety of devices, and mobile included. The one exception to that I'll say is just if you're using the virtual lab simulations. As you saw, the lab scene is rather complex. There's a lot of equipment, and you can move all of it around. So that becomes very challenging on a smaller screen. Maybe it's just me and my inability to resize things. I know the kids are really good with that, but so for that, I do recommend a larger screen, but otherwise you should find that the resources are compatible with any device.
That's great. That's great. Are there any type of tutorials or support resources to teach faculty, I guess, that are going to use this in a classroom setting? So I guess talking more about our training, do you have any type of resource to training teachers to using the platform?
We do. We have a few different resources, and I'm going to share my screen one more time. I know I very, very quickly alluded to our cluster here, but I want to spend just a few moments going through it with you. So under content type, again, cluster, or it's also right here in the library. This is our remote learning cluster, which, you know, again, each of these is a pathway, and you really could treat it like a self-paced course. So you could go through and, you know, figure out how to sign up for an account and have guidance on how to create your own content. I will say that we also have, I know folks will get a recording of today's experience. We have a similar recording on our YouTube channel, and we also run periodic workshops. We just ran one this summer focusing specifically on teaching lab skills remotely, which was based on this pathway that you see here. So a variety of different tools available. And if you don't see something that meets your needs, I would encourage you to reach out. We are always happy to do customized workshops for schools and districts that are interested in using LabXchange.
Okay. Is the software, is it an open software system? Can people like create their own content and add it to the library, or is it like closed?
Yeah, a great question. So our public library is curated through building relationships with organizations, but we're always interested in building relationships with individual collaborators as well. So if you are someone who, you know, regularly creates content and is interested in collaborating, I would encourage you to reach out to us. But we do want to draw that distinction between the public-private, and so that public library is really, you know, something that we build through those relationships. But you know, so most of the content that's created in the private library will stay in the private library, again, unless we have a particular arrangement with an organization or individual.
Great, sounds good. Talking about the clusters, you were mentioning the core cluster. So probably one of the limitations is, like, let's say, like I mentioned before, like if I'm like a high school teacher, I'm probably very busy. I don't have much time to start from zero. So, but I might have like a topic that I'm teaching. I don't know, it's a type of a specific topic. And is there any way to facilitate how I search for all the content available related to a specific topic? Because like I mentioned, I mean, it's just that many times people are just too busy. It's hard to, especially if there's like a lot of content, people might get overwhelmed with the amount of content, but you might be looking for a specific material related to a specific topic that you're going to teach. So I guess that's related more about how the search features of the platform work. Can you talk a little about that?
Sure, I'm happy to do that, and I'm going to share my screen one more time just to demonstrate. I'll also say that, again, that is a pain that I feel as a former educator, and so I am working hard to work with my team to curate additional clusters, again, those starting points for teachers to make it really easy. But to search the library, I demonstrated a little bit, but I'll be a little more conscientious about it. The facets on the side, so I'm a former chemistry teacher, so I'll filter for chemistry. And let's say I'm really looking for something for my introductory chemistry class. So I'm going to go here to background knowledge and say, okay, I want something with no background knowledge. This is for students who are seeing it for the first time. And you know what? I really would like something interactive. So I'm going to filter for a simulation. So right there, I've really narrowed the choices just to something that I'm interested in. I can also do a keyword search here. So let's say I want to find something.
That's more or less what will help to finally narrow down
between the keyword and the facets.
there's so much content and so extensive that people might get like a little overwhelmed when they look for things. But I get that the search tool help a lot to narrow down the things that are more focused on a specific topic. Let's see what other questions we have here. So how can we, I have a question from one of the attendants, how can we communicate with other teachers in other countries on LabXchange?
Great question. So there's a couple of different ways. We are launching very soon our global discussion forums, and so those will be available to everyone and great place to connect with other educators and share best practices. You can also search the people inventory, which we, again, didn't have time to look at today, but you can filter people by interest, by region, by experience. And so you can find folks you know, who are teaching the same thing as you or meet the criteria that you're looking for. And you can either message or create a mentoring relationship with them.
Sounds great. Let's see other questions. Will content related to information technology be also added to the platform? Probably topics related to programming, more computer science topics. Are those within the areas where you guys plan to expand?
Yeah, we are very excited about all of the different domains that intersect with life sciences. And of course, increasingly computer science is one of those. And so actually we're working hard right now on a very interesting collection of resources that blends genetics with Python coding. So that will be up soon. And we're continuing to pursue collaborations with organizations that bring that content to LabXchange.
Even I need to enhance my Python programming skills. I mean, I got trained in different programs, but that's nice. It's definitely something that even if you're not a computer science person or major, it's really needed in all engineering and science anymore, pretty much nowadays.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can simulation be used on this platform? I guess you mentioned the simulation toolbox that you guys have. And how can this be integrated within a given coursework? So I guess if someone has some topics again, and they want to look for some simulation related to that specific topic, I guess is more or less what that person is asking.
Sure. So we just you know, looked at how you can filter and find the simulation that's right for you.
Right.
Once you do, you can share that with students by sharing the link. If you have a learning management system that you already like to use, you can add that link just as you would any other web-based resource. You can share to Google Classroom. For folks who use Canvas, you can add that you know, as well as part of your sequence. So a lot of different ways to share that with students. You can also share it through a LabXchange class, and you'll be able to monitor progress on the simulation directly on LabXchange that way as well.
Okay. Do you have any knowledge of colleges using LabXchange to perform some experiments, some of the simulation related experiments?
Absolutely. We have a lot of colleges that are very excited to be using this currently and to use this in the future in the coming semester as it gets started. And we're particularly excited about some collaborations with local institutes to work on, you know, expanding this out into thinking about the other aspects of career preparation, like regulatory aspects of biotechnology and things that really relate to career prep.
Right. One specific area that I was kind of looking at, I didn't see much material, probably you guys are expanding. What about physics? Do you guys planning to perform physics related experiments? And that's one of the things where, again, we have a lab, but we can, due to the pandemic, you cannot perform experiments. So how are you guys, are you planning to expand to physics?
We do have physics as a category now. I think we have somewhere around 800 or so assets there, and we do have simulations primarily from PhET and the Conquer Consortium for physics support as well. I think that that is something that we likely will not produce in-house. That's not our area of expertise, but we are actively looking for additional collaborations to fill that out.
Sounds good. And do you have any upcoming training events related to LabXchange?
Great question. We are thinking about what events would best serve our community right now, and we're very interested to you know, plan something that really meets educators' needs. We've heard a lot of excitement about connecting with other educators and sharing best practices and sharing what they're using. So stay tuned. We're going to be announcing fall events through our blog and through our newsletter, so we'll definitely share those with you.
Sounds great. Do you want to provide your contact information again, so that, in case someone has any additional questions, we can contact you or contact the LabXchange?
Absolutely. So again, great way to stay in touch with us about all of the updates. You'll get an announcement when our translated content is ready. If you join our mailing list, and of course, we'll put that up on our blog as well. You can also follow us on social media at LabXchange. We're pretty active there. And then you can also contact us, collaborate at LabXchange, if you want to get in touch regarding, content creation and collaboration in that vein, or scheduling a custom session for your network. So please feel free to reach out that way.
That's great. Just so that our attendees know, so this webinar is going to be, we're going to send you a link with a YouTube access so that you can check the webinar, and then you can have more, you can see some of the information. The contact information is also going to be sent by email. So we'll be happy to get your feedback on the webinar, any information that you might inquire about or that you think that will be interested to share. We'll be happy to hear from you. Thank you for joining us, Jessica, in this virtual webinar. We really learned a lot. It's really a topic, like I mentioned in the beginning, that we are really stuck because we do not have access to labs, and it's just what drives science, and how do we deal with that problem during the current pandemic where we don't have access to a laboratory. So it's really a great tool to complement what we are doing right now to teach our courses online.
Well, thank you so much for the invitation. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Great rest of the day. Thank you all for coming to the webinar.